So the F2 Ultra was already a powerful MOPA laser engraver, but when you attach the conveyor add-on accessory to it, it becomes a serious volume production machine. Now, I'm going to show you how this setup makes it possible to take on a real customer job like these keychains I've been engraving and do it faster and more efficiently than you could probably do it before. So this will be a bit of a day in the life of Steve using one of the tools I need to make it all happen. You'll also want to stick around because later in this video, I've got a bit of a top secret tidbit about the upcoming F2 Ultra UV laser that was announced recently, and you're not going to want to miss that. So let's dive in. Normally, when you're engraving with a Galvo laser like the F2 Ultra, you're going to work on one piece at a time because the work area is relatively small. And that's fine for personalization of single items or small orders, but it becomes a real bottleneck when you want to take on a volume job where you need to make 300 copies of something. Of course, you can create jigs and maybe engrave a half a dozen blanks at a time, but the loading and unloading of those is going to be a real time vampire. And that's why adding the xTool conveyor to the F2 Ultra eliminates all of those problems, and it's one of the key differentiators for this laser over most others. It's also why this F2 Ultra is still in my shop. Instead of manually loading and unloading each blank, it automatically feeds them into the laser, into the work area, and recognizes them, even if they're placed at random angles on the belt. And that means less handling, less downtime, and much more efficient process. And that means you're going to make more money. Makers running a side hustle or small business can take advantage of this upgrade, and it makes them scale very easily. You can move from one-off products to true batch production without needing massive industrial setups. And that's a big deal if you're, if most of your capital equipment budget is sitting in one single tool in your shop. Now, before I actually start my volume project, there's a couple things I need to do. The most obvious one is to get the conveyor installed on the F2 Ultra. Now, it comes in this big box, but it's actually really easy to set up. You first screw one part of the bracket onto the bottom of the conveyor, flip it over, then screw the other half onto the laser itself, and then just place it. It sits right in there, and then two screws hold it onto the laser. So that's pretty much the physical assembly. Now you do have to plug in a cable. So on the back of the conveyor, there's a USB plug, and then we can use one of those new USB plugs inside the laser to plug in the other end, and that's it. So physically it's connected. Now we do have to do some software configuration as well. So I just loaded in the graphic that I'm eventually going to use, and I'll position it roughly on a piece here on the workspace. I've now focused it, but I have to set up the conveyor, so I can go in there and select the conveyor option. And at this point, I can start my project. And it's pretty much ready to go. I dropped a few blanks on the conveyor here, and I put my graphic on one of them, and that's the one I'm going to use for calibration. So I can now go to that next button that's sitting there for the conveyor, and it's going to go find that blank where my image is, and it's going to identify that as the shape it's looking for. After that, I can just send this to the laser, and I'll show you in real time here a couple of these being done. And you can see it just automatically does it and puts them in the right alignment. Now, looking at the other end of the job towards the end, you can see there was a couple of blanks falling off the end of the conveyor there. Those are ones that got missed. Now, fortunately, it didn't miss too many during this operation. xTool in xTool Studio has been doing a continuing job to improve this feature, especially on dark materials like these keychains. But overall, I'm pretty happy. It really didn't involve a lot of work to complete the job by having to re-engrave a couple. Now, I took all of those keychains and piled them back onto the belt on the other side, and I'm going to put a QR code on them. And fortunately, xTool, of course, in Studio offers a QR code generator, so I'll create a QR code for the website that I'm going to use, and then I'm going to paste the text as well down below. Now, I will engrave this text rather than an outline, so when I do the settings, I'll sort all that out. And I'll drop it over here on the keychain that I'm going to use for alignment. And again, I'm going to go and detect the shape that I want to engrave on, and it will go find it, and you can see it there. So we're pretty much, again, ready to go with the other side, and I'll show you the job here. Again, these are real-time engraved, so this is happening pretty quickly. and it does the QR code. Now, again, over at the other end, you can see it missed one. I'll just put that one back on and do a single. And when I'm done, I got a big pile of keychains that are now engraved, and they've got the company logo on one side and a website on the other side. So overall, pretty happy. This took me roughly, I'd say 30% or at least 30% less time than the last time I did an engrave like this for this same project. So hopefully you can see that for makers running a small business or a side hustle, this setup with the xTool F2 Ultra combined with the conveyor is a real upgrade for a shop. It takes this basic MOPA laser from being a mostly single item engraver to a true production machine that's perfect for volume jobs like these keychains that I did. Now, the pros here are pretty clear. You get measurably faster production times and far less time having to handle items. And additionally, you get the ability to take on larger customer projects when they come your way. The downside is that it's still an extra accessory and it does take a bit of time to set up, but if you're serious about scaling, then this conveyor is going to pay for itself pretty quickly. Now, I did promise to share some leaked information with you about the upcoming F2 Ultra UV laser, and here it is. I was chatting with xTool a couple weeks ago about this and trying to pry some information out of them about this new laser, which was definitely pretty hard. However, I did poke them a bit about the price of the growing list of UV lasers that can do internal 3D engraving, and I was inadvertently told that the price of the F2 Ultra laser will not be very high and will be very accessible, and I think that's good news. Now, I realize this is super vague, but I'll keep you posted as I find out more. And I also will hopefully be covering this new laser in detail very soon. So make sure you subscribe and hit the bell so that you don't miss it. And tell me down below in the comments, would you actually use something like this conveyor to speed up your own volume production? I'd love to hear what you're thinking. And with that, I'll wind down. I'll say get out there, make your world, and I'll see you next time.